feel a little awkward because again, it's sort of jumping in the middle, so it's your first time. So just sort of ask as many questions as you have to, and hopefully it'll be fluent. So Roman number 4 is all about keeping kosher, an important part of Jewish life. We learned last time, letter A and letter B, that the Torah itself lists species of animals and fish and birds that are kosher and non-kosher, that can be eaten and can't be eaten. It also says even kosher species, there are certain parts of the animal that can and cannot be eaten, and that's all there in the Torah. In addition, like if you just had the Torah, it would be a pretty, if that's all you knew about keeping kosher, it would be sort of fairly simple actually. Certain things you eat, certain things you don't eat. Some people call those rules, they call it like kosher style, right? They eat beef, but they don't eat pork. That's like kosher style. Maybe you've been to like weddings that are like kosher style, okay? But the Rabbinic Judaism has a number of additional elements of keeping kosher, and probably the most significant is a concept in Hebrew. It's called tam ki'ikar, which means the taste is like the thing itself. Tam ki'ikar, which means we aren't just concerned about whether the thing is kosher or not in its essence, but also whether the taste of something non-kosher has been absorbed into the thing that you're eating. So you don't eat pork, but we also don't eat things that have absorbed the taste of pork. So what would that be? For example, let's say you are frying an egg and a little piece of bacon falls in your scrambled egg, and you go, oops, wait, no, I'm keeping kosher today. So you take out the bacon from the frying pan, but it has left its taste, and if you would eat that egg, you would taste the bacon. And let's say a little piece of lard, goes into, you grease your frying pan with lard, and you cook your bacon, so the taste of that lard is absorbed fully in your scrambled egg or whatever it is you make. And even though there's no actual substance anymore, it's all dissolved and gone, you can't see it, the taste of the non-kosher thing has been absorbed into this food that you made. Even the food was originally kosher, it was like egg, it was some vegetable, it was meat, pork and beans, whatever it was, but now it has some non-kosher taste in it, it's also non-kosher. In addition, we're concerned that not only can taste be absorbed into foods, but taste can be absorbed into utensils, and taste can then be expelled out of those utensils into the next thing that is prepared or cooked in that utensil. You may say, this is strange, this doesn't happen, but it actually does happen, and you can see this yourself. If you take a wooden cutting board, and you cut an onion, and then you cut an apple on that wooden cutting board, the apple will taste like onion. This is because the taste of the onion gets absorbed in the cutting board. At least the rabbis understood this was happening, is the taste of the onion is absorbed in the cutting board, and the next thing that's then cooked on the cutting board absorbs the taste from it. And so if instead of an onion it was something non-kosher that was cooked, prepared in a pot, in a pan, etc., with a knife, and then you would try to use that same pot pan for something kosher, it would absorb the taste of the non-kosher thing. And so that's also a concern for loss of kosher. This leads us to the position really that kosher food has kosher ingredients and is made in kitchens and using utensils, pots, pans, etc., that are exclusively used for kosher food. Because if not, we're worried about the taste of something non-kosher that was absorbed into. Now, you can also, so wooden cutting board, you can experience this yourself. With you use a cast iron skillet, you can also, you're not supposed to wash them with soap, right? Because they absorb everything you cook kind of adds in the right. So you can taste. That's also readily apparent. The taste of the thing that was cooked prior gets into the things that are subsequently cooked. With the modern alloys that we have in our kitchen, stainless steel and things like that, it's probably not really apparent. And maybe there's actually one rabbi who said, Melamed, who's a pretty serious halachic thinker, a serious Jewish law thinker. He's made the argument that with stainless steel, none of this, stainless steel doesn't absorb taste, and so all of these complicated rules of kashrut of kosher food are inapplicable if you have stainless steel. It's like you can be totally lenient with stainless steel because it doesn't absorb. That's the whole point of stainless steel. So that's a really interesting theory, and maybe 100 years from now, that's what people do. For the time being, that's not how we act. Sorry. So it's a nice theory. Maybe it's even right, but that's not how we live. Okay, we assume because we don't know exactly how the rabbis themselves, even thousands of years, didn't exactly know the physics or the chemistry of how taste is absorbed and stays within things and is expelled. They always assume the worst. So assume that your knife, cut a hot piece of pork chop with your knife, assume that the knife is hollow, and the entire volume of that knife is filled with pork. And then you stick that knife into something kosher, assume that it empties out entirely. Like the worst case scenario, the entire volume of the knife is entirely filled with something non-kosher, and then that volume of non-kosher food gets expelled entirely into the next thing that you use that knife in. Like assume the worst, and that's how all the calculations of kosher food get sort of developed. So what are some of the rules? You don't really need to know these rules to keep a kosher kitchen. Let me explain, but I'm telling them before I'm going to tell them to you, but you don't really have to know them, because the laws of kosher food, is what I'm about to say and summarize. It's sort of like be akin to learning how to drive from reading insurance company accident reports, right? This car went through the red light, crashed into that other car, the impact was here at this point, and that car spun around and hit into that thing there, and this is the outcome and this is the damage, right? That's what, like the police would write up an accident report, insurance companies write up accident reports. That's sort of what, like the kosher law, if a piece of this falls into that, and it's the size of this is that, and here's the outcome, and you use your spoon, you stick it into this, and then it goes into there, this is the outcome in terms of the spoon is kosher, the food's kosher, whatever the outcome may be given the scenario. But you wouldn't learn how to, like the whole point of learning how to drive is like not to get into the accidents, right? And the whole point of keeping a kosher kitchen is not to have accidents. Like you keep the non-kosher things out of the kitchen, you keep your dairy and your meat separate. Like you shouldn't have, this spoon going into that pot and the wrong thing falling into it and mixing up and you can't find, like that shouldn't happen. And the whole point of a kosher kitchen is to avoid those kinds of accidents. If those accidents do occur, and sometimes they occur because people make mistakes and things happen and in-laws visit unexpectedly and mess with your cutlery, and that happens. So then, okay, so we have laws for like how for the outcome and how to figure out what the status of the food is. But really, just only kosher ingredients in your house, pots and pans, cutlery, exclusively used for kosher food, and then there's really no problem. Really, keep your dairy and your meat utensils separate, and then you're not going to have these problems, or you'll minimize those problems. So, but what are some of the rules? So some of the rules are: taste is transferred only with heat. So, in order for, let's say for example, if you have your bacon frying pan and you put cold, it's clean and cold and dry, and you pour some Cheerios and milk in it, and eat them out of your, bacon frying pan, that's all fine. Because the non-kosher taste in that frying pan can't leave the frying pan and contaminate your Cheerios and milk as long as they're cold. Okay? It has to be, if you were to cook something in that frying pan, then the food that you cook, the string beans, whatever, the eggs would then, the taste would leave the frying pan and contaminate your eggs. So you need heat in order for taste to move from one thing to another. If there's no heat, there's no contamination here. So often a lot of people make mistakes, I put this in that, I stuck this in that, whatever kosher mistake they make. If everything's cold, it's not a problem. How hot does it have to be? Anyone know when you're reading? How hot does it have to be for taste to transfer?
100 coils.
Good. Very good.
Or a baby's belly gets burned.
Correct. Very good. So these are actually, the Talmud didn't have like a precise method of measuring temperature until later times. They didn't have Celsius. I know Celsius was invented by Mr. Celsius, Mr. Fahrenheit hadn't been born yet. They didn't have precise temperatures. What they did have was observation. So there are two measurements in the Talmud that seem to be the same temperature, we say. One is the temperature at which a baby's belly is burned, which is the same as the temperature at which your hand recoils if you touch it. And the other measurement, which also understood to be the temperature at which you can no longer hold on to something, which is very the same as recoiling, which is the Palestinian Talmud says the temperature at which your hand can't hold something. The Babylonian Talmud says the temperature at which your hand recoils, but they're basically, those are identical. And I think, from what I understand, the baby's belly being burned is also the same temperature. I know somebody who once called Child Protective Services to ask them, to tell exactly how hot this might have to be to burn a baby's belly. And they said, "Oh, sir, you should never, be in hot water." He said, "Oh, I understand that. Just tell me, how hot it would be." And they said, "But you really shouldn't." He said, "I understand. Just tell me, please." And they're stay in the line, sir. We're going to hung out there. But that means that if you're doing dishes by hand, and you're I put the wrong, this is my dairy fork, or this is the non-kosher spoon that my housekeeper was using for, whatever. So, and I washed it with my other kosher things in the sink by hand. So if your hands are in the sink washing the dishes, then it's not too hot for your hand to be there. It's not so hot your hands recoil. Nothing bad happened. Okay, you just rinse everything off, and everything is good. Okay, things have to be like piping hot, you would say. If you're washing things by, if you don't have the safety thing in your boiler, and it's really, really hot from your sink, so that you're doing dishes by hand, but you're holding it from the side, or using gloves, then maybe it could be hot. But if you're just, your hands are in there as you're washing, it's not going to be a problem. If things are dry, you can't have any taste. Taste won't go from absorbed in one thing, won't leave that thing and be absorbed into something else if there's no liquid medium between them. So if you have, what would be an example of that? Let's say you have you're cooking, you're frying bacon, or someone's frying bacon, and there's, with the, I don't know how you do this before. You take your spatula and you're doing this with the bacon and you're frying it, and some piece of bacon or bacon juice kind of goes over the edge of the frying pan and lands on the burner of your stovetop. Okay, so it's piping hot, right from the frying pan, so it gets absorbed into the metal of your grill, your burner, and then you want to cook some kosher pasta in your kosher pot on that same burner. So you'd be concerned, maybe the bacon taste absorbed in the burner will leave the burner and go into the pasta pot, which is sitting right on top of the burner, touching it. So as long as the burner's clean and it's dry, that's not a problem, because it can't get from the burner into the pasta pot if they're clean and dry and there's nothing in between them. If it's still dirty and greasy and you put the pasta pot on top and the fire's on and it's hot, then the pasta pot will be given its bacon juice and taste will go straight from the burner into the pasta pot into the thing that is in the pot, in fact. So far so good?
What about a grill? Is that the same rules as a pot?
A grill would be the same, yeah. So if you have they can go camping and they have a barbecue grill there, so that people put non-kosher meat right on that grill, it's absorbed in that grill. If you could actually get it clean, you could then boil something on top. But the grill, it's really, you gotta have that greasy char on, so that'd be a problem. Best not to, probably a different grill if you're in that situation. Some other rules that are important. Once we're talking about taste being absorbed, we have an understanding, that's only a problem if the taste can be apparent. And it's certain, they say this in environmental science, the solution to pollution is dilution. Okay? Nice, right? Okay. So in kashrut we say the solution to, I don't know, but the point is, really, once things are diluted, the taste is no longer apparent. So if I'm making a large, we have a very, very large, we often host large Shabbat and holiday meals, and so often we make a very, very large quantities of chicken soup, which is where we can freeze half of it for multiple. So we have a big, many, many quarts pot of soup, and then a little bit of something falls into it that's not kosher. So it just disappears into this big cauldron of chicken soup. So in the olden days, I actually, used to find someone not Jewish and say, "Would you mind coming and tasting some of this chicken soup? And do you taste any pig fat in this chicken soup?" And if they said no, it'd be fine. Over the centuries, the trend shifted away from relying on asking folks to just taste things, and we came to rely instead on the ratio of 1:60. In less than 1:60 strength, no taste is apparent, and therefore there's no kashrut concern. So if a little thing falls in, it's less than 60, nullified in 60 times its volume of the larger thing that's being done.
Did you do it intentionally?
No.
Boolean.
You cannot do it intentionally. And that's an interesting question what intentionally means.
If you're cooking meat and dairy side by side on a stovetop.
And a little drop.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you should be careful that doesn't happen, but if a little drop, that does happen. Let's say a drop, you're...
But is that intentional?
No, that's accidental.
I'm saying, could you put a piece of pork bouillon in your soup?
Yeah, no. Also, the 160 rule is a it's like a heuristic, it's like a general assumption that nothing can impart taste in less than 1/60th volume, but like spices that you put in that if you put a little pinch in, presumably it's because it can impact the taste of something much larger, and so that would be, so, you know what I mean, even if it were accidental, if the taste actually is apparent, that would be a problem. Or if it changes the appearance of it, or if it, you can't, like if you put a little bit of rennet into a big thing of milk, it becomes cheese. You can't say, it's a tiny little bit of yeast that I put in, a tiny little bit of rennet that I put into the milk, it's nullified in 60, but no, because you can't, because it was milk and now it's cheese. So you can't say, oh, it had no impact. Like now, if a big thing, a block of cheese, that was because of the little pinch of rennet you put in. So, or you know, so that also is an exception to that rule. There are a number of exceptions to that rule, but that's an important one. But for accidents, this is often the accident will be not end up being a problem. If you're non-kosher, if it falls, and there are lots of permutations of these which I once knew very, very well, and over the years since yeshiva have now know less well because they rarely happen, because keeping the kosher kitchen is about avoiding the accident. It's about how to drive, not accurate. But like, what if the non-kosher drop falls onto let's say a piece of a potato floating in your soup, and the piece of non-kosher food falls on the potato, and there isn't 60 times the potato to nullify the non-kosher item that fell on the potato. And so now the potato is not kosher because it couldn't nullify the drop that fell on that potato. And now that potato in the pot of soup, whatever, doesn't have 60 times to nullify it. So even though the non-kosher item that fell in was 1/500th of the volume of the contents of your soup pot, if it fell on something first, it could make that not kosher, and then that item that's not kosher could spoil the entire pot. This is an Ashkenazi chumrah. This is a different version of Ashkenazi and Sephardic halakha, where the Ashkenazi position is more strict. You can see how it would be very strict, right? Depending on how things come. So far so good?
What if something drops in and you take it out?
Great question. Right away. Yeah.
But then you taking it out maybe with a kosher, like with a dairy spoon, and it's a meat thing. Then isn't that cross?
So how would you do that? Let's say your piece of.
If it's not hot, maybe you just do like a plastic spoon you throw away.
Yeah. Or maybe it's better. Maybe the spoon becomes non-kosher, and you can always make the spoon kosher again, which is better than throwing out the entire. Right. So good question. Right, let's say it's something dairy, some cheese falls into your. Well, cheese would be a good case of like something. It's hard to be good because it would melt really quickly if it's actually dairy. So that's.
So if it melts, then it's
Oh,
not.
let's do the opposite. Yeah, let's say you're making a dairy onion soup, and a piece of meat falls into it. Because the onion soup, let's say the onion soup, take the onion soup off the, so let's try to be realistic. Take the onion soup off the stove, you put it down on the counter to cool. Meanwhile, you're also taking your chicken out of the oven, and you're gonna put it here, and you're gonna cut it, and you're kind of putting the cut chicken into a platter, you put the refrigerator, and then a piece falls into the dairy onion soup. So now you have chicken, meat, whatever, in your, so you have to take it out. So the onion soup is still piping hot. So if you take a spoon, let's say a dairy spoon, this is a dairy thing, you stick it in and you take it out. So now in that spoon, you have, even if it wasn't, it was a small volume, this was less than 60th, so the soup itself is kosher, the pot's kosher, and now you scoop it out with a spoon. The spoon is now holding piping hot dairy soup with a chunk of chicken in the middle of it. That spoon needs to be kosher. Very good. Yeah, excellent. And even after you move it, you still would have to worry, you still would want 60 times the volume. Nullify, because we're worried that maybe you took the piece of chicken out, but all the taste had already gone into the soup, so you want 60 times the volume of that piece of chicken.
Can you add more water or something to kind of make it
No,
so it's 160?
that's a good question. That's a great question. You can't, because that would be. I believe that would fall. I could be wrong about that. My recollection. This is.
Your potato example seems to indicate that it wouldn't work because it's temporal.
Depends where it falls. If it's all liquid, that's, if it falls, and it's also it's not all temporal, it's also geographic, it's also location based, right? If it
But you're
falls-
saying like drop 60 times as much water into it?
Yeah, this is discussed, and I forget the answer, I think it's not okay, but this is one of those, like, it's an embarrassing thing, I wanna like stop the tape and like go back. So I know the answer, because this is the type of, like I spent
I
a
feel like
better.
it's debatable.
I said, no, like, this is like a large part of my rabbinic school studies, were like these types of questions, which is sort of it's interesting for a different day, you know, like why is it that I spent the better part of a year studying these types of questions, and then you get out there into the world, like nobody does this, right? Because you keep kosher kitchens, like this shouldn't really happen. It does come up, it comes up in, it could be situations where maybe it would come up.
Like catering, maybe? Or like,
Yeah, what about, like maybe you can't nullify prohibited substances, but can you nullify dairy? So let's say you have soy milk, which is a little bit of dairy. Can you add water to it before you put it into your meat dish? Maybe that would be okay. You're not nullifying.
If you add 60 times as much, it should always work, because then this is just some other unkosher thing, like the piece of bacon or whatever, right?
But you don't want it to be. But you don't want to violate the prohibition of intentionally nullifying something prohibited. Does that prohibition apply also to intentionally nullifying something permissible, like dairy, which just can't be mixed with meat? So that's what comes up in that context. There are also interesting kind of quantum physics that gets applied, like sort of like if you have two pots, one has 30, let's say one has 30 cc's, and the other one has 30 cc's, and you have 1 cc of something not kosher, and it fell into one of the pots, but you don't know which pot it fell into, we say both pots are kosher, because we didn't know which one it fell into one of two, and the two of them combined have 60 times the volume to nullify. It's like quantum physics, right? It's like in either, we know it's in one of them, we don't know which one, it's like in both of them at the same time. I feel like that's Schrodinger's cat, right? It's like alive and dead at the same time. Like the piece of non-kosher is in both pots at the same time, and so they're both kosher. Which is freaky, right? That's quantum physics. The quantum physics.
Level of intention.
The quantum physics is freaky. So, again, it should never happen, but like, you know.
Is the rennet a phase change thing, right? So if it weren't a piece of meat and it were actually cheese and the cheese melted, then it's the same as the rennet example.
Why?
So,
No, just because you can't remove it. You can't remove it. Like if you have a chicken soup and a chunk of cheese falls into your chicken soup, so there's no way to remove the cheese. If it's 60 times the volume and it's gone, you can't see it, can't taste it, it's not apparent at all, then it's fine, good to go, yeah.
so it's actually like the rennet thing is just that it's a catalyst for like a reality.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, if you have, let's say you have a butter knife, or you have a knife that you use for slice for cutting bread and butter, and without thinking, you use that knife to, on a Friday afternoon, to like poke into your shallot cooking, and you stir it, oh my gosh, this is the dairy knife, and now you look at it and like the butter is gone, like so that's like a few smears of butter got absorbed into, so okay, that's fine, it's all fine. It's kosher because it eats 60 times the volume.
and if you had this clean and happened to use a dairy utensil in a meat thing.
So let's say good. So let's say it was clean, and you took a dairy utensil and you stuck it into, you use a dairy knife to cut some steak.
Yeah.
So it's clean, but you're worried about the top, the dairy taste absorbed in the knife, and so you would want there to be 60 times the volume of the knife in order to nullify it. Now, which may or may not be there, because the knife is, you may not have 60 times, but you might, depending on how big the piece of steak is. But there's another leniency which comes into play, which I'll introduce now, and that is taste is only a problem if it's an enhancing taste. If it's a rancid taste, then it doesn't render something non-kosher. Suppose the thing itself, and it's just the taste of the thing that we're worried about in the kosher implications of the taste of the thing. So if it's a detrimental, negative taste, we're not concerned about its impact on the thing. And that could also be contextual as well. So like for example, if some bacon juice falls into your mint chocolate chip ice cream, that makes the ice cream worse. That's disgusting.
It's all subjective.
I think we go by like what most people would. I mean, that they're right. I think that is. I believe in this case, the rabbis say we go by what most people would consider to be a. I mean, to this now with like.
I can see that.
Yeah, they're actually.
I'm sure that
Yeah, it
exists.
does exist. Yeah, there's,
And they have crazy flavors nowadays.
That's true. That's true. So maybe that's a bad example. But here's something which is more helpful and relevant. This happens a lot. This is a very, very common ingredient. This is usually important, and that is the rabbis understood that any taste that has been absorbed inside a utensil or piece of cutlery for more than 24 hours becomes rancid. So you take your dairy knife and you use it to cut a steak, piping hot steak, right? So the dairy taste gets taken out of the knife, but that is like a 24, the knife has not been used for 24 hours to cut hot dairy. And so the taste that is absorbed into your steak is rancid, 24-hour-old dairy taste. And so the steak is still kosher.
Also, the dairy could also be cold dairy.
If the knife was used for,
Use it
yes,
for
often,
butter.
like what is your dairy? You give a dairy knife, so you use it for cutting cold butter.
Cream cheese.
It's not really a dairy knife, but let's use it for cutting hot lasagna,
Yeah.
or quiche or something like that. So it might actually be a real dairy knife that absorbed dairy at some point, but not within 24 hours. And so when you use it to cut the steak, the dairy taste that goes into the steak is a rancid dairy taste. The steak is 100% kosher. The knife needs to be kosher because the knife now has meat and dairy taste absorbed inside it. You have to kosher the knife. The steak is fine. And in most cases, the thing has not been used for 24 hours. In fact, we're so certain that the thing has not been used for 24 hours that we have an assumption in Jewish law that says any utensil or fork or spoon has not been used for 24 hours, unless you know that it was for a fact. Okay? So if you don't know, we assume it wasn't used for 24 hours. That's not true for restaurants, because they use things constantly. But for a private home, with a basic assumption, pots, pans, forks, knives have not been used for 24 hours, which means that whatever non-kosher taste gets absorbed into the food is a rancid non-kosher taste, and even if it's apparent, it's not going to make the thing better, it's going to make the thing worse, and so the food itself is kosher. So kosher ingredients cooked in a non-kosher pot that hasn't been used for 24 hours, they're kosher. Stick your dairy spoon into this, your meat spoon into that, they haven't been used in 24 hours, whatever taste gets absorbed is a rancid taste, it's not a problem. A spider falls into your scrambled egg, you take the spider out, the scrambled egg maybe it absorbs some like spider taste. But do spiders taste good? No, they don't. Okay, that's rancid, so that's bad. Okay, that's a bad taste. Okay, a mouse, find a mouse in your cholents. Okay, take the mouse out. Take the mouse. Okay, does the mouse make your cholent taste better, or does it make your cholent taste worse? Worse, probably. So that's actually, the Talmud says there are two types of mice. There are field mice and city mice. And the Talmud says that city mice taste disgusting and field mice are delicious. And so you have to,
Decide which kind of mouse it is.
yeah, so.
Is that like a rat? A city mouse?
No, I think just mice that live in the city versus mice that live in a country mouse or a city mouse. In fact, in medieval London, this was actually a major crime. People would sell city mice for food, pretending they were field mice.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was like the bacon ice cream of their day because people probably ate it then.
Yeah, yeah. I would say, probably in Chicago, if you find a mouse in your cholent, it's a city mouse, and if you take the mouse out, you can eat the cholent, okay? It's great.
And the perk of living in the city.
Perk of living in the city, that's right. Mice are really, we had, before we here's a cholent and our story. Before we lived in Chicago, we lived in Princeton in a very old house that was not super well maintained, and we had a terrible, terrible mouse infestation that we could not get ahead of. And it's just awful. They're cute, but then like, you just find mouse droppings everywhere, and any food that you kept would just be like cardboard boxes would be eaten through, and the food would be eaten. So any crackers, cookies, flour, sugar, anything would be eaten. We had to keep all of our food in little plastic boxes like this, and sometimes these two, they would, given enough time, would chew through. So it was pretty yucky. So our landlord sent a exterminator, had like a monthly exterminator visit to our home. He shows up one Shabbos afternoon, right as I'm arriving home with like 20 lunch guests. And the exterminator, I guess, thinks we all look the same, and so goes up to one of my guests and says, "Tell me where the mice are," you know. And then we get sorted out, and he goes to the house and puts out traps, whatever, and then he's done, and I invited him to stay for lunch, which he did, and there's John, that's why that was the... Okay.
When you mention
Yeah.
like bacon juice,
Yeah.
is that counts also for kosher steak juice? You're just trying to use a
Yeah,
example.
yeah,
It's just
exactly.
easier to
Exactly. So kosher steak juice that falls into
Any of
your
those, okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I
question. So in a place like Asia, where like bugs or spiders might be considered a delicacy, per se,
Yeah.
right? Would the rules vary from
We
place to
sort of
place?
alluding to that. They might vary based on.
Like where you are in the
Yeah,
world?
but it may, yeah. But it's, you know,
Do you mean rules like of what you can eat, or
No.
rules of like what is considered
Choose what's
bad
No,
considered
what
bad
is
taste.
like what would
Yeah.
be considered to
Rancid.
breaking the rules?
sort of like an enhancing taste versus a bad, yeah.
Yeah, because like while we all might think a spider falling into eggs might be absolutely horrid,
Oh.
someone else might be like, oh, well,
So shots are involved.
I like that.
Yeah. So
And I'm only asking because I saw it with my own eyes, like firsthand, like people did that.
So insects, it's becoming, you know, I saw it on the radio, it's like the next
Yeah, it's
thing is eating insects, and it's gonna, you know,
super weird.
yeah, but like within a decade, it could be a really popular thing, it's a great.
Yeah,
Cheap,
my
so-
question was more so just if it.
No, so yeah, I'm sure if that's, so
where
if
you
everyone's
are in
eating,
the world.
if everyone's eating like insect protein is like
And it's like,
pouring it onto their yogurt, then like you can't say it's a disgusting taste and it
Exactly.
distracts if everyone around you is doing it. That's a fair, you know, we'll see, we'll cross the bridge when we come to it, but what is sort of undeniably true is this principle that taste that's been absorbed for more than 24 hours becomes rancid and therefore it's
Right.
not going to contaminate something. And that is a very, very common, like of all the year that I spent studying things like that's really important, you know. That's very important and that comes in handy.
This is kind of a random question, but have there been any stories, like in the history of like people who've like tried to make life harder on Jewish people by trying to adapt to these crazy things?
Like we'll eat insects just so the Jews
Just so
don't
that,
eat
like-
anymore. No, there's some, usually they come through the shtetl with torches like that.
That's easier.
That was their yeah. No, like I you know like
There could be crazy stories. But
yeah, I used to, you know, I used to, you know, think that like if, you know, if I just thought, I don't know, if Palestinian terrorists were to switch to attacking, like the Arab infrastructure, like the West Bank settlements, it would be probably much more effective at like stopping the growth of, you know, and would be much less violent, you know, no one get hurt, and would probably
This is
like.
going on the internet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it would save. Yeah. Okay. It's very-
so funny.
Well, it would save a lot of lives, and it would probably be more effective also. You know, and it's right. You know, it's not protected. You know. Okay. But there's another important. Not only are things. You know, here's another thing which also tastes bad, and everyone agrees it tastes bad. It'll also make you sick if you were to eat it, and that is soap.
Oh yeah.
Right? Soap tastes bad. So if you have a mixture of something tasty that has soap mixed in it, then there's no kosher concerns. So that means that if you have, so let's say you have your plates, dishes with with your steak residue, steak juices, and you have a bowl that was used for shears and milk and some yogurt, whatever, and they all get mixed together and washed together. Let's say with piping hot water, so your hand can't go in it, but mixed in with your dairy and your meat or your non-kosher and kosher food is soap. So the taste that gets mixed and absorbed is this rancid, inedible taste because there's soap mixed in, and so there's no kosher problem. So again, if the mistake is, oh my gosh, I put the wrong spoon in the dishwasher, or I was doing dishes and I realized that I was washing this with that and this, so did you use soap? And hopefully the answer is yes, I use soap, and therefore no problem, okay? Because there was a rancid, inedible soap mixed in with this whole system, and so nothing problematic happened on kosher control. It's a huge leniency, okay? And you should always use soap, okay? Just use soap.
So can you add soap to things that?
Yeah, because that's the normal. Because you're not nullifying the prohibition intentionally if you're doing the normal way of washing dishes or the normal way of cooking that item is to do it in such a, like if it's the normal way that you would make that thing or do that process, then it's not nullifying the prohibition initially. So always good idea when you run your dishwasher, put a little extra soap, like sprinkle some like outside of the little container so that as soon as the cycle turns on, there's always soap like mixed in just in case you put the wrong fork or wrong plate in the dishwasher.
Is that the same for the actual dishwasher? Does it, because there's soap in it?
So you could, so even even before dishwashers, the Shulchan Aruch, the 16th century Code of Jewish Law, says you can wash dairy and meat dishes together in the same big cauldron of hot water as long as there's soap. And so that sounds like a dishwasher. So that would be a very good argument to say you could wash dairy and meat, or kosher and non-kosher, together in the same dishwasher as long as there's soap for that entire system. We don't say that. I mean, there's some who go so far, and certainly b'diavad after the fact, we might rely on that for leniency. We're stricter about dishwashers because there might be like actual pieces of meat, actual, or, and dairy that might come in contact with hot water in the tumult of the dishwasher where there isn't yet a soap particle as part of that system. So we're going to be, lichatchila, ab initio, as we set out to do things in an ideal way, we keep them separate in the dishwasher. But certainly, after the fact, if a mistake was made, it's very unlikely for anything involving a dishwasher to be a problem after the fact, or hand washing dishes certainly as well.
Do these things have like a kashrut status? So like, is it like the same as using non-kosher alcohol to like sterilize something? Like, is soap kosher or not kosher? Is that
No, so
relevant?
soap is not edible, so there would be no,
Okay.
yeah, it wouldn't matter. Soap is not edible, again, it couldn't be, right? Even let's say, like, it tastes rancid, so even if soap were made from pig fat, which maybe once upon a time it was, and maybe it could be, so what? It's rancid, it tastes really bad, and you're using it, to clean things, so whatever taste gets absorbed is a rancid taste and has no kashrut problem, it causes no kashrut problems. And that you can do like that. You can do, like, let's say somebody sells, at Whole Foods, so whatever, like pastured, wild boar soap or something, wild boar dish soap, which is like cool, like, right? So that's fine because it's whatever the taste that it's just a rancid taste that's being put straight on your dishes. It's not. There's nothing. It's not have a kashrut.
How would they define edible? Like, would smoking, like, was a cigar or like
Cigar's
a cigarette?
not eating. Cigarette's not eating. Something goes in your mouth that you eat, like consume through your esophagus. Okay.
So like when we had the kosher for Passover cigars, it was just a sale play. It was just
you're putting it in your mouth. So like I would say maybe that's the reason why. We had Rabbi Reese from the CRC was here last Wednesday. He was discussing the CRC gives conscious revision to medical marijuana, but that's not. Medical marijuana isn't. It's not smoked. It's like consumed in pill form, or it's oil, or whatever. So it's a little bit different. But so people were pushing on that. It wasn't clear to me what the. I didn't have time to like get to the bottom of it. So but I think if you. It's in your mouth, so I think that's why people are sensitive. Like, make sure
Does medicine have a kashrut status?
if you're taking it, so that's what we push. So that medicine that you're taking, like you're allowed to eat things that aren't kosher under a doctor's advisement. So that would apply to certainly apply to medicine. If the doctor says, "Oh yes, I see you have lobster deficiency syndrome, like the cure is eat lobster," so okay, like you're certainly if it's a serious medical condition, the doctor, this is what you have to do, to save your life. So you can violate the prohibition of the Torah for important health needs. You don't need to go quite that far if the medicine is taken in pill form, because then taking in pill form is also not eating. You're just swallowing a pill. That's not how you eat things. That's ingesting a pill is different from eating it. So if it's taken in pill form, also that's the further grounds for leniency. But at the point at which it's, let's say, medical marijuana, with the oil, the THC is reduced to an oil, and then that oil is then baked into a cookie or something. So at the point at which you're going to the trouble with making it into a cookie, and somebody could come in and verify that the cookie's kosher, like why not? That was sort of their feeling. And, people who are taking marijuana, if they're taking it as part of under the supervision of the doctor for a serious medical condition, for a medical therapy, but can't hurt. So like, why wouldn't you want to make sure that all the ingredients that are part of the brownie or whatever you're eating is also kosher?
So is it ostensibly?
And so too, if you're taking a liquid medicine that tastes like cherries, like why not, if it's possible, find one that's super that you can verify as kosher, which isn't always possible. But.
What about taking a pill of like bacon?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah,
So, so that would be fine because it's not. If it's for medical purposes, it's not. That's okay. And if it's swallowed, it's also probably not. It's not eating, so you wouldn't violate the prohibition of eating anyway. So
Interesting.
if it's for where things get a little bit iffy is that what if it's
Just For how would I?
If it, no, well, I would say, no, if it's for like a vitamin,
Yeah.
which is not to cure a illness, but to enhance your health, which seems a little bit like eating, and it's a pill form, so maybe it doesn't matter, like fish oil, gel caplets, which could be half the day, sure. So I think with vitamins, we say find one that's kosher. You can generally find kosher vitamins. There are enough brands that are kosher, but if it's like medical, like a doctor tells you take this for a deficiency and such, or to cure an illness, then you're not to worry about kosher. That's how I would make that dividing line. And the right in between that dividing line is prenatal vitamins. That's always the, So what I say, if the doctor says take prenatal vitamins for, then okay, then it's not, then it's, I would say don't worry about kosher. Like if it's, you're also swallowing a pill, and that's other kosher. Let's do D. Mixtures of meat and milk. So the Torah also prohibits. The Torah just says don't boil a kid, a baby goat, in its mother's milk. It says it 3 times. The rabbis, Chazal, understood that to mean there's a biblical prohibition against cooking, eating, or deriving benefit from meat and dairy that has been cooked together. Okay, you can't cook meat and dairy together, and once it has been cooked together, you can't eat it or derive benefit from it. That's a biblical prohibition. Rabbinic prohibition extends that to poultry and dairy. Not biblical, that's rabbinic only, at a lesser degree, but still important. And therefore we have separate utensils for dairy and meat. Again, not the only utensil. Technically, you only really need separate utensils for things that are used for piping hot dairy and meat. But if you have a dessert plate, or ice cream bowl, you could use your chicken soup bowl for eating cold ice cream, right? Because the ice cream is cold, and so you can eat it out of your chicken soup bowl, right? And just because chicken soup bowl has hot meat, but it we never have hot dairy, it's only used for ice cream, okay, for example. But the general custom is to have dairy sets of dishes and meat sets of dishes, and dairy cutlery and meat cutlery, and some dairy pots and some meat pots, and maybe some pots that are neutral that you would use for making vegetables and pasta and things like that, and which could then be served with any kind of other food. Okay. The same rules of being nullified in 60 and etc. would apply as well for meat and dairy. Okay, letter E, bugs are not kosher. Okay, you can eat bugs. Furthermore, bugs are an exception to the 160 rule because a complete organism cannot be nullified in any, it's like too important to be nullified in 60 times its volume. So if you have half an ant in your whatever, that's fine. It's less than 60 times volume, it's nullified. But an entire ant or a fly or a aphid, on your strawberry is not going to be nullified because it's a complete organism and it's not kosher. So that's why it's important to clean very carefully and check fairly carefully for bugs. Things that are invisible, we don't have to worry. Suboptical phenomena do not seem to count in Jewish law. So if you can't see it with the naked eye, you don't have to worry about it. You can eat it, that's fine. If you can't see it, if you look carefully, then you should look carefully and make sure it's not there. So it's important to clean. I chop. If things are pulverized, chopped really finely, then also probably the bugs are going to be chopped as well. There won't be complete bugs, and that's all further grounds for being used. But in general, cooking vegetables, cut them into pieces. I soak them in a big basin of water with mixing some vinegar. The vinegar supposedly stuns the bugs and make it easier to wash them off. Vigorously shake it, then I rinse them in a colander, and repeat as necessary until if that bowl of water you see little flies in it, then I'll do it again. If it's clean, then different batches will have different degrees of infestation. And every time you cook vegetables, it could be from a different field, from a different season, with different pesticides, with different pest management systems in place, and it could be very infested or it could be barely infested at all.
What about produce that's already been washed, or says been washed 3 times?
Yeah, triple wash. I'll just look at it. Do a spot check of a few leaves to just verify that it's clean. But I think the triple wash stuff is you're not going to get it more clean. I do it
So if one fly lands in a giant vat of soup, the whole thing's done.
If one fly lands on the soup and you can't cook that, well,
rancid though.
The fly is rancid, but the taste of the fly, if you get the fly out, the taste it leaves behind is rancid, but the fly itself is going to be a problem.
So you can't eat the fly.
You cannot eat the fly.
So if you're at a picnic and you have a picnic and some bees fly on your food and they leave,
That's fine.
you can eat it. It's just the act of
Even
eating
if the
actual
bee flies out
thing.
and leaves, like a piece of its leg or some bee hairs, left behind, and
That's
eat
the
that
whole
shit.
thing.
Yeah, that's all.
Take it down.
Yeah, we're real here. We're real. The goal is to empty the table by telling this disgusting story for the end of the hour.
Because you could eat the whole thing of soup, you just have to make sure you find the fly and take it out.
Or at least part of the fly.
Right.
Oh, you can just cut it in half and you're good.
Yeah, you can. That would be intentionally nullifying a prohibited item. But if the recipe is going to blend it anyway, you take your immersion blender and right, then
What
that-
about like the rumor that you eat 12 bugs a year or something by sleeping?
In your sleep.
in your sleep? No way.
Spider.
You
Yeah.
ingest
Oh.
tons of flies in your sleep.
No.
Allegedly.
Yeah. I never heard that.
Yeah, I think on
If you sleep
average,
with your mouth
That's not
open.
intentional.
on average, you eat like X spiders per year or per lifetime. It's there's a stat out there.
I've never heard this. I've heard
You never.
Haven't you ever
Don't
walked
Google
into
it.
like those small bugs?
occasionally, but never I never woke it up with a spider in my mouth. That's not. Is this been checked on Snopes?
I think
It's fake news.
Okay, this is all we're gonna do. This evening, I'm gonna check it.
I'll get back to you on that.
Okay. If you're asleep and you're not aware of it, it's not a problem. That's not a problem. There's a story of a certain group of,
That's gross.
I think Nepalese Buddhists who had a vegetarian diet, and they moved to England, and they had a protein deficiency. And what they eventually discovered was that their vegetarian diet in India included lots and lots of insects that infested all of their flour and their, and their vegetables. And they came to the West and they were eating things that did not have this degree of infestation, and they were not getting the protein they needed from their vegetarian diet. So, that's okay. Letter F, we already talked about. That's notain tam with yam. That's the concept of rancid taste versus good taste. Kosher equipment. Why just have one pot and wait 24 hours? Right? In theory, why do we need kosher pots? Because if we say that every pot has to be used for 24 hours, so what do I do? Just use an old pot, and then I can cook my kosher food in any pot. So, and if you're, and this is discussed in the sources for the travelers would do, you're traveling across, come to an inn, they would give you a pot, and you can make your dinner and whatever, so it's okay. But there's a rabbinic prohibition against using non-kosher pots, lest you, even though they haven't been used for 24 hours, lest you mistakenly use one that has been used within 24 hours. And so, l'chachila, ab initio, when we try to do things in an ideal way, we only use kosher utensils. B'diavad, after the fact, which means the food was already made in a non-kosher pot, or you're in extenuating circumstances like you're traveling and you don't have access to a kosher pot. So then it hasn't been 24 hours, the food that results is 100% kosher. Leniencies for traveling probably don't apply for pleasure traveling, but traveling in the olden days, which was something really dangerous and unpleasant, and people only did because they had to for to earn their living. So I think if you're the point at which you're flying to Singapore or whatever, Timbuktu, you can spend $7 and buy your own pot, when you get there, right? So,
It applies to business travel too.
excuse me?
That applies to business travel. It's very unpleasant.
Yeah, but you're not. I feel like the added cost, in the context of the amount of money that's being spent for a business traveler, even domestically, the extra cost of, I'll get to my hotel in Chattanooga and I'll buy a rice cooker, and I'll just, I feel like just buy the rice cooker, I don't know that these leniencies that apply to kind of pre-modern ancestors necessarily are, but the law is the law, I'm sharing the information and maybe it's useful at some point.
Is this the same reason why people don't use glass dishes?
So glass, we say, doesn't absorb.
Right.
Glasses, so there are some, especially Sephardim have the practice of using glasses for dairy and meat because it doesn't absorb any taste at all, and so that's great. The Ashkenazi position is a little bit more, not to be quite so reliant on using glass in that way. Glass was sort of like the newfangled technology of the Talmudic period because it's not described in the Torah. The Torah talks about metal utensils and talks about earthenware utensils. And glass is a little bit like both. It's like earthenware because it's made from sand, and it shatters if you drop it. But it's like metal, and then you can melt it down and make it right. So it's like, is it metal? Is it earthenware? We don't know what to do. But like the Torah talks about, here's the rules for metal, and here's the rule for earthenware, and they're like, what do we do with glass? So we still don't exactly, but we generally assume it doesn't absorb anything. So there's that leniency. But the Ashkenazi consensus is not to use glass for your dairy and meat stuff. But you can, yeah. Let's pause here. G and H, it won't take us very long. We'll do them the next time we meet, and then we'll go on to I, J, K, L, and N, O. Where are we going to meet next? Let's just decide that now. 13th, there's a Kansas board meeting. The 20th, I committed to teaching at the bar. 27th of November. 27th of November? Sounds good? 7 o'clock again, good time? Is that right? Oh, we did. Yeah, 7 o'clock, that's right. So it'll be in the bulletin, it will be in the show emails, it will be on the show website. If we have to change the time, just pay attention, like read the bulletin, pay attention to the emails from the show. If you have to change the date, it'll be announced that we'll go out. And then obviously, you're welcome to, you can come back before then we have things happening here every day, so you're always welcome to join us on the show. Thank you so much, have a good night everyone.